Hey guys, thank you for joining me today. My name is Chantal. So as we discussed on Facebook, for some of you, I am preparing the series of webinars to help us navigate 2020. This is one that actually a lot of people ask about, which is financial well-being and how to organize ourselves so that we can move forward in the system, because we find ourselves obviously confined, and a lot of knowledge that is coming out is indicating that there is an agenda in play to create an automation of, of the financial system to the point where we might have a chip. So I know that some of you just think this is way out there, but I just want to remind you that things like that have been already tested. Sweden had people put chips in the arm to open doors, and I don't see that being really far-fetched. And there is also obviously the need, the push for forced vaccination, which automatically would probably be linked to the chip to automate our information. So you can see that this is a very scary time, and I'm not here to fearmonger. I am not here to share anything that is about creating panic. Actually, I'm here to share as much solutions as I can from my experience. Just to give you a little bit of background though, my research into what a lot of people still consider conspiracy theories started in 2014. I kind of dismissed, well, not dismissed, but stopped looking into it for a few months between 2014 and 15, because it was so heavy that I needed a break from it. But the reason why I went into it is that I just figured out that things were not okay, and there was something more to be looked into. I also had, the luxury in my lifetime to travel a lot and to live in different cities and to have experiences with different people. And I think you get to really understand the world, even if at the time it doesn't make sense. When you go back into this wonderful storage of memories and thoughts and links, you can create a pathway. So I think there is a conspiracy in the world, but I just don't think it's a theory. I think it's actually very practical, and we can see it now with people like Bill Gates trying to push something that is really good for him and the people that are connected to him in his club. There's a lot of the media just doesn't share the truth. There's a lot of confusion. So there's a lot of studying that needs to be done, which is overwhelmingly what is overwhelming, actually, period. And it's also a lot, and it's confusing, and sometimes you have to go back to things a few times to check. Fact checking and confirming sources and information, it's really hard, especially as we get into this period of censorship. But my question to you then would be, why are they censoring information if the stuff was just BS, right? So I think it's very important to understand that question and actually to ask it. So 3 years ago, my partner and I started looking into solutions as to how to live our life off grid at some point and as much in nature as possible. There are many components as we did that, but we wanted to create something that we felt could be helpful for us, but also the people that we love eventually. So maybe even creating a blueprint that other people can follow. So we moved to Portugal. We bought a farm. We are growing our own food. We are going to aim to be completely self-sustainable by the end of the summer. So obviously we prepared for it. So we were financially ready. So we don't have any debt. But, and I know this is not everybody's possibility or circumstance. So I appreciate that. And in my presentation, I will tackle on that too, because it's important. But our readiness was because we just had enough information to think actually that was the right thing to do. And we made it happen. We've been sharing this information with our friends and loved ones, but the reception has been people don't want to believe that certain things can happen. And sadly, we get to a point where a lot of things that we predicted are happening, like the financial collapse that we're seeing now, the financial crisis. So we're going to just start here. And again, please don't be panicked by the information. Remember, knowledge is power. If you learn some things, there's a solution so you can plan, and this is what this is all about. So in our next well, I would like to start with a nice little quote, actually. Financial well-being and the feeling of economic security for ourselves and our family are essential in contributing to our overall wellness in modern day living. I think this is really, really important. But financial well-being at this point has changed. It's not about just having a lot of money in the bank. In fact, probably is really not about that. But it is about finding that wealth that comes from the things that matter. Little disclaimer here, the presentation should not be used as financial investment advice. Please, that's really important. This is only my opinion that I'm sharing, my information that I have. So and as I promised, I would always share with the most candid, heart, and there's nothing for me in this. So I really just want to put my word out there, whether you think is helpful or not. I also want to ask that if you are commenting on this video, to be kindly respectful of the people that are looking at this. So if you don't agree, you're welcome not to agree, but share your thoughts so I can see your perspective. And if you don't have the vocabulary to do so in an eloquent way, then perhaps just avoid commenting, because what's the point of abusing other people? I see a lot of that happening on many videos. So kindly be open-hearted and open-minded. Also know that a lot of the information that I got and understand are because I was in New Age for 20 years pretty much. So although my faith in God never went away, I explored different scenarios. So that's when you learn a lot of things that now are coming to be quite helpful. But we're not going into that today. So I'm just saying, I'm not talking just to talk. I'm actually, trying to think outside the box and try to connect dots. Now, the talking points are changing economics landscape, the financial well-being, which meaning it had then and now, and what to do, which is the most important part. What the hell are we going to do? So the importance of financial well-being, it's traditionally meant having that security, as we saw from the quotes. But I have some quotes here from a few sources where actually really reflect how people can get stressed about money and not having assets. So 1 in 4 people in the UK said that they have lost sleep over money. That's pretty impressive. But I also want to say that a lot of the people that I spoke to which are part of this demographic have a lot of credit card debt that came from excessive shopping and excessive purchasing and consumerism. And a lot of time is because there are other things missing in their lives. And there's obviously the conditioning that we are put through. Social media is the perfect place for conditioning people to shop more. You see other people having, you want. You see other people in abundance. There's this message of abundance being all about things that we have. And the more abundance you want, you create it on your own. You have to visualize and make it happen. Yes and no. Yes, as in, of course, you have to have an abundant mind, but an abundance also comes in different aspects. And in my opinion, it is about knowledge and accumulation of intelligence and sharing, and it's not about hoarding things. So I think there is a bit of a gap there. And then 8% of the workforce in the UK spends time worrying about their money problems. Now, those are people that have an income, okay? So this is not the people that don't have an income. Those are workforce, people that are working, that have a lot of issues. There are other stats that I didn't put in here because they're not relevant to this talk per se, but when we talk about financial well-being in corporations, a lot of the time we have to take the demographic, and a lot of people that have money problems have a problem with their income and therefore have traction with their managers. They think that they're not paid enough. The worries that they have with money ends up being also a stress on their performance at work. So I think it's quite important to understand that money actually financial security can affect people mentally as well. So, and in the future, this part, being financially stable, whether it's money or just asset, it's really important to understand because it will become a little bit more stressful or more stressful, full stop. So just keeping this in mind as to what how it can impact us. Then the landscape that we have now, sorry, I went to okay, here, the landscape that we have now. Okay, So now, as in landscape has been changing. This is not something that just happened, by the way. This is something that has been in the works for well, I would say since 2000. I'm sorry, here 2008, when we had our first crisis in the millennium. And the reason why we didn't go under at the time, by the way, and you saw this with a lot of government funding rescuing banks, which I felt was completely unnecessary and the wrong thing to do. But because you can see from there's a lot of money that has been printed by the central banks. Now, I don't know if you're aware, the central banks are not actually, they don't belong to governments. They are private institutions, but they kind of work as federal support. But they are private banks. So when the government gets money from the central banks, from the Federal Reserve, they are borrowing money, and that debt goes on to us. In one of the slides, I actually have a link to the debt clock. That's a US. We'll have the US on the first page. On the second page, you can see the global clock, so you can see every country. I didn't have the global amount when I looked, but you can see per country. But just think about one thing: the UK is about over 3 trillion. So imagine globally, right? So now, if you're producing more and more debt, that debt obviously falls on every single person, which we repay back with our taxes. So it's not, it's not that the government has control of our currency anyway. Moreover, our currencies are not supported by anything tangible. They really are just paper. So what's happened is that they've been printing more and more money, injecting it into the system so that we didn't have a collapse in 2008. And that has created, however, this massive inflation of prices over time. We're going to see it more now than ever, and that we did before. But this is what has periodically happened, and you know this because every year you notice that prices go up, and sometimes your salary does not correspond the inflation. So it is quite scary. Plus the inflation that the government tells us we have every year, plus in correspondence to actually is real, is not exactly. So there's a little bit of a gap there too. So we have a situation where we have inflation of prices, deflation of currency. We have that. Then we also had a progressive loss of jobs in these years where we obviously from the recession, it recuperated a little bit, but we also had a lot of jobs that were replaced by technology, so AI. And I can just suggest one thing that you probably have noticed, all of you have noticed. If you go to a supermarket, you have some tills where you have a person working, and then you will find others that are machines, and in these machines you scan your stuff and you pay. So there's no really need for a human to be there. So you're basically creating, you're replacing that job with a machine. So this has been also a problem, because what happens to the people that used to work in the supermarket, right? Then we have the institutional failure and lack of important, true, and sound information about money. So a lot of people don't know that the Federal Reserve or central banks are private banks. They think they are governments printing money. So they don't realize that every bit of money that the government borrows from the central banks, it's our debt. They don't realize. In fact, actually, if you look at your taxes return per year, there is a part that says banks, by the way. At least in the UK, I don't know if globally you can see it in other countries, but in the UK you can. So, I mean, it's there. They don't even try to hide it. It's just that people don't look. And then when you learn about economics, I think there is a lack of education there. I have always seen that people have this impression that, they have to get out of school, and some of them get that to study further. And then they have to buy a house. And in the past, actually, this is a very important part as well. In the past years, between 2008 and now, so 12 years of illusion where the banks have slashed the rates, you have people thinking that they're borrowing money for free. But remember something, you can maybe be borrowing money at 0 rate, which is great for your repayment every month, but you don't own that house until you paid it out. So you still have a debt, and you still have to calculate that although you have a debt that is cheaper because of the rates, you still have to pay it back. And if you lose your job, you can't. So those things are not really shared. And I think the lack of education is really impacting how we are dealing with everything today. The banking system, that exactly. So it could sound like it's helpful, but actually it's a trap. And then the assets that actually have values are really important to understand. So again, it's really great to have your own home, but until you have no debt on it, it's really not your house, it's the banks. And a lot of things that people don't talk about, or it's never been shared. I don't know why, but things like buying, instead of keeping investments in the markets, which of course are manipulated and always have been. No advisor ever said, why don't you get yourself physical gold and silver, which, by the way, has been hoarded heavily by banks like JP Morgan, the Central Bank of China, and Russia. And you have countries like the US and the European countries that have been selling, which I think plays in the bigger economic disaster we're about to see, because you have countries that are really strong versus countries that are really not strong. So what does that mean? And those are things that the media doesn't cover, right? So you have to really do your research and look. But we found a few years ago that we were telling our friends, look, don't keep currency savings in your account, put some of it into physical gold, which was an opportunity to buy. Now there's shortage. We have friends that went to an approved dealer in London to try and get it. There's shortage, so they can't get gold. So that's one thing that I think obviously is it's changed, and the lack of education really gets me, because obviously we've been sharing it with our friends, but they didn't want to take it seriously. Now that they're finding that, which I am sharing here. But again, this is just to give you the scenario. Don't panic. Okay. So what did it mean, security there, that the security, the financial security then and now? This is really, really important stuff that I think I want to cover. At the time, or then, historically, financial security is a stable income for living, so covering your living costs, investments in your assets. A lot of people look at assets also in their stock markets, not just in physical assets like homes or whatever. Saving accounts, again, it's cash flow, it's liquidity, which I spoke about earlier. The value of the currency changing, obviously it's a devaluing asset, so it's not really an asset. It's more like, okay, you have cash flow, which you need for paying things, but you have to be careful not to keep too much in the banks. Yearly holidays and leisures, they were seeing as, that comfort, and your pension fund. But now things have really changed. I mean, in financial freedom at the time also meant you have that income and you can really do things like that, going on holiday, have your leisure time, and you have your pension and you've sorted. But now it's financial freedom from the system. So having no debt, so debt-free, not to be restricted by the system, having a real and tangible asset. So I want to say this: if you don't have a house right now with a mortgage on it, I feel actually it's better than having one with a mortgage, because then you have no debt. At least you might not have assets, but you don't have debt. But it's important to anyway build a strategy as to what we're going to do after this. What are we going to do to have some assets that actually matter in the system changing? I even know friends that would disagree with me on this, because again, the rates are so low from the bank, so remortgaging has been a big movement. But I completely disagree on that, because people are not educated about this stuff, about what actually means. And also you have to look at the landscape, look at what's happening now. Markets are falling, people are losing jobs, and what does it mean for people that have mortgages? So it's really, really important to understand this stuff. So having real and tangible assets without any mortgage on it, the balance between liquidity and real assets. So because your currency is losing value, I wouldn't say keep a lot of liquidity. I would say the good balance here would be to have enough liquidity to say if you need savings for 6 months at least, but trying to diversify what you have. And I'm going to get into that, what that is, by the way, because I think in these circumstances, I feel for the future, we need to think outside the box. So not in terms that we've been thinking like up to now. And then investing in self-sustainability, which is exactly what I'm going to go into. So be as self-sustainable as possible in case you need to make a serious shift. And that comes down to what is our world going to, what are they trying to do, if they are going to Look, this is the thing. What if they're going to have this currency that is going to be only digital? Because they've been trying, and in fact, actually, on the debt clock, you can see that there's a part that is sorry, hey, Scooby, that is looking at debt, the value of debt against a cryptocurrency. So they are definitely looking at using cryptocurrency. You know, the whole experiment actually, cryptocurrency, people buying and having their value going higher, higher, higher. It was designed to see how people would react to it. And I'm really sure about it. But the central banks have been really taking notes. Plus, the platform that's on is really safe, and it really works well with the technology that they want to implement. So, you know, perfect equation for them, I feel. So self-sustainability is really important. So having that balance. So here it's actually a very good slide. Our cash savings don't stretch as far as they used to, right? This is a little input from Hargreaves Lansdown. I used to have my but it comes from JP Morgan Asset Management. So I used to have some of my investments there when I was working at JP Morgan. I moved my pension there, and plus I moved some money to invest. But look at this, right? Savers have collectively missed out on at least 188 billion, the equivalent of 7,101 per household in saving, because of the devaluation of currency and the slashing of rates. So you can see that this is it's very real. This is not a conspiracy. This is just the reality. So when you see this, how can we say that we had a good, healthy economic system when you can see that people, the average person like me and you, and by the way, again, we were prepared to invest the stuff, whatever, we have no debt, but I think I lost my pension. Like I even, you know, I bought some physical gold for my pension, but I had to do it through a fund because there was money from my JP Morgan pension fund, which I can't touch until I'm 55 or I get severely ill. And, you know, I mean, every time, like the fees that I have to pay for that are extraordinary. If I had it just in the stocks, I would have lost money anyway, but I didn't have to pay such big fees. But now I have it in there in this physical vault somewhere, and I have to pay so much per year to keep it there. So you see, the system does not accommodate for us people to have anything. This is really the sad thing. So of course I wrote that off. I'm like, I'll never see this, but not that it was a lot anyway, but you know, it was enough to be like, hey, it's valuable. And so I just feel that this is really a reality check for everybody. The system doesn't work for us at all. And you know, this is from the Bank of England, and it's like, it's a friend of foe. And as I said at the beginning, there's a crisis, they keep on printing, but what does that mean? So this is from 2016, a slide from 2016. At the time, we had 435 billion debt in the UK alone. Right now, in the UK, we are over 3 trillion. This is, 4 years? I mean, it's intense, right? So globally, trillions and trillions and trillions. Now, when I think about the money system, it drives me insane, because we have these debts that are from paper that has no value. We have these debts to institutions that are owned by private bankers. This is the biggest illusion. Like, talk about the matrix. This debt could be wiped off, but it's not. And they honestly, these people have so much money. They could live by writing off trillions of debt. They could still be quite wealthy, but it's about control. And this is why money has been created, and the system has been created the way that it is, and also why money has been stripped away from being backed by gold, because there's no value, which means you can play with it, you can print as much as you want, you can create this illusion of wealth by having this money circulating. You know, the wealthy have been investing. They're not cash rich. They have been investing in. They've been investing in properties. And for them, by the way, for that 1% that I'm talking about, having debt worked because they ultimately don't pay it back anyway. And, you know, they can remortgage things, they can borrow money for cheap, and it goes, you know, in the club, and they can get more and more assets. Then those assets they can sell at a higher price easily between their circle. They can, I mean, to be honest with you, I've always looked at this as money laundering. But again, my opinion, so don't quote me, and I'm sure every single banker out there will probably disagree with me if they made a lot of money out of this, but I don't care, because you know what? Prove me that anything that they've done up to now, the system has done for the people as works. If you prove me that, I honestly will say sorry publicly, but I don't think you can. So here we go. This is what the Bank of England, a massive debt, and you can see actually from 2009 to 2012 to 2016, and I just told you what the numbers are now. There's a link there where you can click on the clock and see it go up every second. So then the past decade of central bank monetary policy has left us, let me move myself down here, has left us in precarious situation. So in a 2017 survey of leading European economists, over 60% responded that they believe the loose monetary policy of central banks have been responsible for the increasing global debt. I mean, that's clear, honestly, levels, and also the rise of asset value, property and financial assets such as stock and bonds. In the same survey, 65% of those economists agreed that our economies faced increasing risks arising from an excess of public and private debt and the inflate asset prices. Okay, so we have seen this, so we know what that means. But I think this is in a way, you know, as we are talking about this now, this is not a lecture on policies and stuff, so whatever. But our approach has to change. We are part of this game. A lot of people have been caught up in this game. So what's the next step? I think that's really what the most important thing is, to be honest with you. So 2020 headlines, before I get into the nitty-gritty part, I also have to move myself again. Okay, hold on. Okay, 2020 headlines, some are covered in mainstream, some are actually just brushed over on mainstream, but it's really interesting. So since last October 2019, CEOs are stepping down from their positions, right? Why? And what does it mean for the economy? Now, interestingly enough, we have here 1,300 CEOs that left in the last year. This was an article on NBC News last year, 2019. So, but by 2020, January, February, we had quite a few here. I'm gonna actually, I wrote them down, they are not there. So Disney, the CEO of Disney, MasterCard, Victoria's Secret, Uber Eats, LinkedIn, Salesforce, Nestle Water, BlackRock, they all left. They're more than this, by the way. They all left. And then you had Bezos, who cashed in on 4.1 billion shares. Yeah. In Amazon. Of course, that was sold as he's going through a divorce and he had to split it with his ex-wife. Okay. No comment. But I also think, you know, these things are happening. Now, you can see a trend, and you can check this yourself. I didn't put it in here, but you can check. You can go on Google Finances, or Yahoo Finances actually is a good one. I use that one. You go in Yahoo Finances, you can put the stocks that I mentioned here, these guys. You can see the stocks going up in January and February, and then crashing down in March. And of course, the COVID-19 happened in Europe in March, starting in March. How convenient. So, not saying anything here, but how convenient. Then I had to put this in there, like you had the picture of the table with the pyramid. Of course, what else? It's just hilarious. And then shortage of physical gold is not being reported in the news, but I can assure you it's there because, well, obviously we bought some, and from the people that we bought, we asked them if they had more, and they do not. But we know that JPM has been hoarding. We also know that JPM, and this was a scandal, this was covered in the news to some extent, they kept a artificial gold price down. Then Central Bank of China and Russia have been buying, or People Bank of Russia, of China, I think it's called, I don't know. Anyway, the central banks of these countries have been buying them. So buying a lot of gold. So what is it? To be fair, JP Morgan was more silver than gold, but still, precious metals, right? Why are you buying them? So there you go. You have this headlines, some of them that have not been covered. Then you had Brexit. That was another ridiculous thing. But and again, right, if you are in the US, in the UK, and you can see this, Brexit promising so much to their people, forgetting to say, by the way, when we leave the EU, we have to pay back quite a few, bucks to the EU. So it's a bit cheeky, right? I know it's kind. Okay, what do we do now? This is the best, most important part, because this is what Like it's essential and essential. As I said before, what do I move myself here? I'm gonna put myself here. As I said before, time is short because we, some people have been preparing for a long time. And now I really believe that we're running out of time. They're pushing for this vaccination. They're pushing for this chip. What does the chip mean? Would it be that they're going to make everything connected to the chip, including our bank account? Possible. If that happens and you don't want the chip, I certainly do not want the chip. I'm not going to take it. I'd rather die. They can shoot me, put me into prison. I don't care. But I am not going to take it. However, I bought some time because we are a little bit more independent. But I'm definitely... So my thing is that we want to create a community that can become self-sustainable, because alone you are one person that can totally be like, whatever, take it out. But as a community, it's a lot of people, right? So one thing that I think is really important right now, first things first, in this moment, present moment, if you have no job, you're stuck at home, leverage your skills and do them online for the time being. Because eventually, if everything is connected to the chip and we can't have all technology that we don't want to have around, and we don't want to have internet, that obviously you're going to be kind of disconnected. But I feel that, I feel personally in my heart that this will happen. So I'm ready to be like, I'll have to be offline. So for the time being, I'm sharing my skills, my gift as a yoga teacher with my community from my old students, and I'm teaching classes online. Loving it, they're loving it. It's really helping for our mental health as well whilst we're home. So I'm leveraging this because it's a way that I can, make sure that I have this income to pay for things whilst we also prepare to be self-sustainable. The support system is really important here. And because the clock is ticking and we are in a crisis, and I think we're going to be in a bigger crisis, I feel that having the right people around is essential. So you need to find people that are like-minded and that can support you in your endeavor. Right now, what could that mean by support system? Well, maybe you just have to, live together with your maybe multi-generational living with your parents, with your sisters, with your siblings, with your with your family or friends, so that you all come together and you create a support system. But also at this point, support system, I think, is also like helping each other to find information, to find solutions, to share ideas. Then find like-minded people. Now, this is really important because finding local like-minded people means that even if we have to be offline, and by the way, they predicted that we might not have internet for a while because then people will really beg for 5G. I don't know if that's true. I wouldn't put it past them. So it could be possible. So if that happens, you want to still have contact with people that are close to you. So this is why it's very important. Online communities are great to start with, but remember that having people close by that you can talk to, be like, let's meet up and chat, really super important. And you can say, okay, but now we can't see people. Guys, read between the lines. Community. So build a team and delegate. Everybody has different strength. Now, this is really important when it comes to community, because I'm talking about once you find the like-minded people to strategize and have a plan with, let's say, let's go live off-grid. What then? Everybody has different skills, and those skills need to come together to create that force, so everybody can do different things and create that community. Now, I'm really talking about here, possibly, even when it comes to support system, bringing in everybody's wealth, whatever wealth that is, or whatever coins you have together to create a project together. And I'm going to go into details right now, but think about those things, put them, this is step by step, and I'm building the picture. Then, so you want to have people that have different skills from yours, that can bring something together, that can bring to the table, you can collaborate and create something. And then you have a strategy for self-sustainable living. So food, water, shelter, energy are super important. If you can start getting seeds and garden supplies, super important. So having your food, it is imperative. I shared a video a few days ago with some links to documents like the Rockefeller Foundation's plan in 2010. that already talked about manipulating, taking over seeds. Now, remember also that Bill Gates invested a lot in GMO seeds, especially in India. Why? Okay, so Vandana Shiva was talking about this. She is an activist. She does research. She has nothing to gain from this other than sharing information. So I personally think having our own food, our seeds, real seeds, non-GMO seeds, is super important. So there are still places where you can get organic seeds in the UK. You can get them online. There's an organic shop. I have a farm here, a sanctuary here, that prides in collecting seeds from all over the world. So they're creating a bank here so that it can be shared. I think that's amazing. So really, really important to do. And I know there are other people that are doing that globally. So well done, you guys. So getting this is really starting now is really, really important. So if you don't like gardening, start learning. It's not easy, but it's not that difficult. I mean, I used to kill cacti. So trust me, if I can actually grow something, and I have something that is sprouting now, so proudly, I think it can be done. The new economy might not be about monetary exchange. I wrote monetary. Okay, thank you. I'll change that before I share the presentation for you guys. Monetary exchange. So it's not going to be about money if our monetary system is going to be linked to a platform that is not allowing us to be free from the system. So having a chip, for example. So, you know, we might have to go back to bartering. We might have to go back to exchanging and sharing skills and looking at it differently. I know that there's actually an input from the person that shared the document, the video that I shared about the document. I'll put all the links below, about the Rockefeller Foundation's document, that actually there's a hint that societies that create their own currency at some point, you know, might do that. So, you know, they obviously create the problem, but they know that there are solutions there. Stock up on, for you and your community, so on survival equipment, flashlights, candles, batteries, whatever you need to get. And I think this is really important if you perhaps think, you know, for yourself, but also for others. So the community, the people that you have, everybody chips in, buys different things, and creates that availability, that need and requirements. And then, Scooby, and then get rid of debt if you can. So I think this is really the hardest one. A lot of people have debt because they have mortgages, and they are, in my mind, the perfect target to put them, you know, to oblige them to stay in the system. So if you can pay it down or get rid of it as soon as possible, think about it that way. Now, I'm not saying that you get rid of it and, you know, and what am I going to do now? When I'm talking about getting rid of debt and creating new wealth, what I'm talking about is you might not be able, this is where it differentiates. Some people might be able to say, I'm going to buy a piece of land that I can work on. Some places you can't build on, but there are solutions to that. If you look into tiny homes, for example, on wheels, right? They are like caravans, and they're absolutely fantastic, beautifully designed. You can make them yourself if you have the skills, or you can share with the community. But you can create these things that you can place somewhere where you don't have to have foundations, so there's no permits needed. You can move them, so it's like a caravan, right, going on a camping trip. And then you can you can put solar for your own energy. You can put water tanks to collect water from wherever it's accessible. And you can also, you know, again, if you can place yourself in a place on a land that belongs to the community, so you guys can perhaps share all together, buy a place where you can grow the food for the community. That's not such a bad idea. Or you know, if you can't do it on your own, but basically helping each other in one way or another. So collecting funds together to buy a place, to create these tiny homes, to create a community that can be self-sustainable. I think that's the wealth for the future. And again, it goes back to having your own food, water, and energy and shelter. And that can be done without having to rely on the system. Now, if you are somebody that perhaps doesn't have a job, and doesn't, you know, what happens to me? Connecting with like-minded people or perhaps you can put some sweat equity into a project where you can have some amazing skills that you can contribute to, or family coming together and sharing and buying, or try to really just consolidate as much wealth in terms of skills and in terms of monetary that you can invest in the stuff that you really need to have. That's the real assets, to have that freedom. Then do that way. So I think the responsibility of people that have planned or have access to some kind of money to invest in this project is to welcome people that are willing to work really hard, that understand, are on the same wavelength, and they want to really contribute to a free system, a free world, to be part of the system. I think it's essential. So, we have to find ways. When we moved here in Portugal, there are lots of rural areas that are available for people that have the possibility, when it's going to be possible for a little while, to move and just move and create that kind of project. But my advice is, of course, look where you are, right? Look where you are based, because it's more accessible in any single possible way, physically, so logistically, but also financially. So those are the important things to think about. I'm sure I left things out, and I'm sure I didn't want to make this hours and hours, and also because it's just me talking and don't have the questions coming in. I didn't want to make it a live stream at this point. I might redo it and do that, but I don't have questions coming in. So if I'm missing anything, I'm really, really keen to get your questions, to get your input, and even things that you thought about that I haven't, and we can share them under, as a document. And I'm sure we can actually create a list, a mailing list after this, and we can just all come together and sharing the intelligence that we collect as we experience this transition, or maybe as we've been experiencing the transition already in the past. So I just feel, in the past year. So I feel that, I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful because I think in a moment of crisis, what happens is that people really, if they are incentivized enough, and I hope that you, like me, want your freedom to stay intact, there is really a way to push. My faith in the Lord has become increasingly present, and I think this is why I can keep I'm going to say this in a very slang way, my shit together. So my composure, because this is fearful, right? It's not stuff that it's pleasant, but I think my relationship with God has really created that strength. And it's a relationship that I appreciate much more now, coming from 20 years of experience exploring New Age. So, and by no means I'm religious. I am not. I don't belong to any denomination. In fact, I used to say I'm Christian because I believe in Christ, but actually I'm not. I follow the Lord and Christ, but I follow it intelligently by learning about Him, His story, and also with the knowledge. I'm going to leave you with this. This is probably another topic altogether, so might do another slide on that. But all the books that are missing from the canons of the Bible fill in so many gaps, which is why I can have a clearer vision of what's going on. So if you had the feeling that there are people running the world that have a massive interest and they have control issues, it's true, and there is obviously a very dark reason why they're doing this, way beyond the physical world, that I don't want to cover in this presentation. So the only way that we really can support each other and survive is by going back to nature, learning the skills that we have to learn to be completely independent off the grid, and really learning that the things that matter the most are not the ones that we can buy. So with that, I just want to say thank you so much for following. Thank you so much for sharing. Please send me any questions, any feedback. If I need to redo this because this was crap for you, I can redo that with more information and more details. And I just want to share so much love and compassion for everybody. And we are in this together for real. Like, I honestly think the courageous people that are sharing out there, that are coming together, are going to make a difference. And so I want to be positive in that sense. And I hope that you can find the faith that I found to support you in being positive and being the warrior that we need you to be to create this alternative system. So thank you so much, guys. If you have any questions, this is my email. Please shoot me a mail. Be kind. If you have criticism, make them constructive. Don't make abusive. I'm really tired of abuse. So yeah, if you can do that, that'd be nice. Thank you so much, guys. I'll see you soon. Bye.